Hi everyone. Titanic is probably the most famous ship that sank in ancient times. Even today, 110 years after the shipwreck, its image remains in people's memories and stories. But why hasn't he been rescued from the bottom of the sea yet? Was there any rescue attempt? Welcome to Wikivedia Plus channel. This means that from now on, we will unravel these mysteries together. Let's go! Icebergs and icy seas first. Let's talk about the circumstances surrounding the sinking of this legendary cruise ship. The Titanic sank on the night of April 14th to early morning of April 15th, 1912. The location was 600 kilometers southeast of the Canadian island of Newfoundland. The tragedy occurred on a trip from Southampton, United Kingdom, to New York, United States. Also, this was the Titanic's first voyage, so it was her first and last voyage. The crew knew that there was a group of icebergs ahead, but they deeply believed that the Titanic would not sink. At 23:39 local time, lookout Frederick Flick discovers an iceberg and informs the navigator of the fact. The navigator immediately orders the full rudder to this side and turns the speed communicator lever to the engine stop position. He then gave the order to tack aboard. Apparently, they tried to avoid a head-on collision by going around the iceberg. These operations reduced the speed of the vessel. Some experts say interesting things about this area. They say that if the Titanic had continued at full speed, a fatal collision could have been avoided. A head-on collision was avoided, but the submerged part of the iceberg scraped the east side of the Titanic. That's what happened at 23 hours and 40 minutes. A narrow but long crack was opened in the ship. The total area was less than 1.5 meters square, but it was more than 90 meters long. He was about 7 meters below the ship's waterline. Water flows at an impressive speed of over 7 tons per second. At 23:50, the cargo hold was completely flooded. The evacuation order is given at 12:55 a.m. and the first lifeboat is launched 40 minutes later. The last lifeboat departed at 2 to 5 a.m., but many people remained on board. As the Titanic got deeper from the sinking, the bow section of the ship began to sink and the extent of the sinking increased even more as time went on. At 2 hours 15 minutes, the screw propeller on the stern of the ship came out of the water and one of the smokestacks collapsed. At 2 hours and 17 minutes, the lights on board go out. At 2 hours and 18 minutes, the ship split into two, one ahead and one behind. The bow, which was already sunk, continued to sink to the bottom of the sea. The stern stayed upright but ended up sinking, capsizing 2 minutes later. Unfortunately, there was no technology available at the time to search the seabed to find and examine the wreckage. Furthermore, just 2 years later the First World War began and the Titanic was no longer an option. It was only in the 1960s that concrete search and rescue projects for the Titanic began. For example, Douglas Woolley suggested a method of attaching a large number of deflating gas-filled naive balloons to the sides of the boat. Some of the ideas were even more bizarre, like filling the Titanic with ping-pong balls. It is interesting to note that despite evidence in the survivors' memoirs that the ship had broken up, many believed that it had sunk without breaking up and that it was lying intact on the bottom of the sea. It was also believed that the vessel should have remained at the bottom of the sea practically intact. At that time, there was much less knowledge about the seafloor than today. Specifically, experts at that time were convinced of the following. There is practically no life at the bottom of the sea. Therefore, there are no microorganisms or algae that pose a threat to ships. Oops, let's not rush. The exact location of the sinking of the Titanic was unknown for the entire period. It was Robert Ballard's search party in 1985 that discovered it. The vessel was found in deep water, at a depth of 3,750 meters. The stern was literally torn apart by the pressure of the water that was rapidly flowing into the unsinkable compartment. The bottom of the ship was missing and the upper deck was completely destroyed. Most of the ship's stern is located more than 600 meters from the bow. The bow is buried in the mud on the seabed for about 20 meters at the front and 15 meters at the rear. Will the Titanic ever see the light of day? Why the Titanic is still not salvaged and all projects shelved. The first and most important reason for this you probably already know. It is difficult to work at such great depths. It is not possible to use divers, and you have to rely on very expensive and high-tech robots. It is also unclear how exactly the Titanic is to be rescued. Of course, it is not possible to place balloons or connect gas cylinders. That concept would still make sense if the ship wasn't in pieces, but it is. A boat that has been split in two is unlikely to float again. In addition, the condition of the ship's wreckage is deteriorating every year. The deep sea is a much harsher environment and was believed in the last century. For example, the corridors of the Titanic, which are almost entirely without walls. Experts estimate that bacteria can decompose up to 180 kilograms of ship metal per day. This means that in 200 years, about half of the ship will likely be gone due to corrosion, leaving the ship just a pile of wreckage. But imagine there is tremendous technological innovation in the near future. And what if the result is a powerful robot capable of removing giant ships from waters 3,750 meters deep or from the Mariana Trench? Even so, chances are that this won't work for the Titanic. The salvage process can cause damage and generally worsen the condition of the wreckage. Another reason not to rescue the Titanic is environmental concerns. Over the last 100 years, the ship has completely integrated itself into the seabed landscape. Its hulls are designed to support large numbers of people, fish, algae, and other aquatic organisms. Furthermore, some of the species found by the research team were only found on the Titanic. For example, a study by film director James Cameron in 2001 found some sea cucumbers interesting. Its body is lilac in color and its sides are lined with a series of shiny holes. The sinking of the Titanic also has a high scientific value. By studying it, we can learn about the ecology of the deep sea. Thanks to this, it was identified that there is a special bacteria, Alomonas titanicae, which is accelerating the deterioration of the hull. By oxidizing and rusting iron, it gets energy to survive. A project is already underway to use the bacteria to quickly remove metallic waste from the seafloor. If something happens to the wreckage, it means the loss of an enormous amount of scientific knowledge. Finally, the ethical perspective should not be forgotten. Of course, all of the passengers aboard the Titanic who survived have since passed away. The last of these was Mervina Dan, who was just 2 months old at the time of the sinking and obviously has no memory of what happened. Few direct relatives of those who died in the shipwreck are still alive. At best, there is a generation of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. However, many people cherish the memory of their parents and ancestors and do not want to disturb the serene rest of their remains at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Either way, the Titanic will never see the light of day again. However, if necessary, it is possible to reach the wreck site on a deep-sea search boat. Some companies offer these tours, and we are always willing to delve into the depths of various mysteries with you. Subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and don't forget to share on social networks. We say goodbye with a goodbye for now. See you soon. Goodbye.